This will be our first episode of the Rut Funnel Podcast. It's Ryan Coyne and a buddy here, Zach Hankey. It's our introduction episode. I'm trying this one from a phone, so we'll see how it sounds and adjust from there. Zach, you want to say hi to everybody?
Yeah, man. Hey, it's super nice to meet everybody. This has been a long time coming. Been really excited to jump on here and get this going with Ronnie. Like you said, that we're hoping in the future that it's gonna sound a lot better. Just doing this first one from the phone, we really were just really looking forward to get going. I have been stuck out doing some stuff for work that I didn't anticipate, so it took us a while to get going, and really appreciative of Ronnie for kind of waiting for me to kick this thing off. So yeah, Ronnie. So really, July, it's a big part, big season for prepping and getting ready. What's the biggest thing you've been working on, Ron? Since we last talked, I've been looking forward to getting out in the woods with you, and I'm curious what you've been working on since I've been gone to get ready for the season.
Well, I think what's going to be good about us having this show is that we do hunt different stuff. As I live in Tennessee and you live in Kentucky now, even though that we know each other from work, but you hunt a mix of public and private. What percentage of private do you usually hunt, you think, a year?
Man, I'd probably say about 50-50. I'm pretty fortunate because I think, as you know, it's actually the training for work I'm at right now. I got to go see my dad's land in South Carolina. So my family has land between New York, South Carolina, and some private. And then, like you said, me living in Kentucky, I got some friends with private. So I probably hunt about 50% private and then 50% public. And I feel like most of the scouting, though, interesting enough that I have been able to get done this year, has been private, which is a little bit different for me. So scouting's been really my main focus, especially starting in July and really starting all the way back to shed hunting season. I've really started to get into shed hunting these last couple of years, so I feel like it's kind of pushed me more towards private land, just because of permission for sheds and stuff like that.
Yeah, and so I up until this point have been about 90% public and about 10% private. I own 30 acres of my own, and now I've built a house on 5 acres, which actually has some deer back behind it. But before that was basically a lot of public, and I had a lot of luck finding big deer on public. Got one, but every year it seems like I have a lot more people come into the public I'm hunting, and the opportunities are just getting fewer and far between and more difficult. So this year what I did is I spent some money, and I got 4 different small parcels that I leased out, and I thought, you got to kiss a lot of frogs to find the right one. So I figured if I got a bunch of them, I would find the one that I maybe would like to keep in the future. So I'm trying out that this year, which is a lot more time consuming than I thought, trying to get cameras out there, learn deer movement from basically zero. And when you're going into a new parcel in the spring and the summer, it's a hard time to go from zero to learning all the deer movement, especially on 4 different small acre parcels there. And then I'm still trying to run cameras and everything up on the public land I hunt too. So I feel like even though I haven't stopped since last deer season, that I'm already behind when I look at my list of things to do before season starts in like 2 months.
Yeah, man, I've always been super impressed with the amount of effort you put in the off season with, acquiring lands and what you do and talking about it. And that it is a lot, man. I feel like sometimes, unfortunately, I actually prefer public land hunting. But it's easy to get spoiled if you have the access to some of the private lands that I do. I think the what's crazy about it is, though, I was thinking is, this year we had a real bad drought, in Kentucky. And what I found walking around, in shed season, and here recently is that, a lot of the habitat changed based upon that drought. And I think the only thing that, is probably good about what you do, kind of moving around in different areas and a lot of public, is it really keeps you focused on what to look for rather than getting in a false sense of security. A lot of these private lands that I hunt, I'm like, hey, I know where my stand's at. I'm going to go there. I'm going to hunt this area. But something I've really been trying to focus on this year is trying to figure out how the habitat changed, and maybe I should move my stand or, stand placement, and really what the deer are doing now rather than just saying, hey, I killed a deer in this location 2-3 years ago, or even on my dad's land, 10 years ago. What are the deer doing now? So I think it's funny that the private land, the strategy on private land can almost really more be the same as public land if you kind of look at every year and every June and July as a reevaluation of that piece of land,
Yeah. Well, I bought the land I own, the 30 acres I own. I bought that back in 2015, and from the time I owned it, it just never produced any big bucks. I think I killed one buck on it that was small, like basket rec. And after finding big bucks on public, I just kind of wrote it off. And, I'd go back and hunt it, but for does and stuff, it's got a bazillion does on it. Every year I put food plots on it and stuff, or I let people from work go out and hunt it and stuff. And the last 2 years, nobody really went out there, and I kind of just put a camera out there, would put food plot out there, and just kind of wrote it off. And last year, with almost 2 years of no pressure on it, I went out there and sat, and 2 shooter bucks just walked out in the middle of the field in the middle of the daytime, just chasing does around. So I think that I'm getting more into like places that have less pressure, because I've seen the results of what happens when nobody's there, because deer will act like deer and they'll just walk out in the middle of the field in the middle of the day.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with that. And I definitely agree with that. So with all these properties that you're kind of, looking at in new areas, and I guess, not a lot of time before the season, is there anything you're doing specifically to think about stand placement already? Or are you not even there yet based on what you're seeing on your cameras? Or are you map reconning it or trying to get boots on the ground to decide where you plan on setting up in most spots?
No, I actually went and bought a few hang-on stands this year, because usually I either run my Lone Wolf hang-on stand or I just run a gun from a saddle. But this year I bought some hang-on stands since I have these properties. I figure I can put them in primary like rut locations, but I had to deploy my cameras first to kind of figure out the way the deer are moving, because I can look at like a topo map and kind of figure out where I think they are, but if they're using, in a terrain feature 50 yards in their direction, then I think they should, and I have that stand up already, then it's just going to be a pain in the ass, and they're going to be out of shooting range and stuff. So I'm just kind of holding off on that, but I did put one stand up out on my private that I own, and I actually put it on the field, the old joke about just hunting the field edges and stuff, and I put it on the field because I don't own the big woods portion where I think the deer are bed, and I actually have to wait for them to come out to food. But I went into my woods, because I do own 20 acres of the woods that kind of jets in on the property line, and I took all the stands down just to, like, if I let any coworkers or anybody go in there, I'm just trying to keep pressure from out of the woods so they just feel completely comfortable in there this year. Have you put anything up or done anything on the property you can hunt?
Yeah, so actually, my dad's property, I was able to get out there. I'll start kind of in South Carolina first, because I plan on really trying to get out there and hunt it. It's not obviously, frankly, it's not the best place for deer, but being a family property, I'm really excited to work that property and try to get a big buck on it, because I know they're there. We have some really good deer on camera from last year, and my dad being older, he hasn't really been able to get out. He's more going to climb up and sit in a stand. So I've been really trying to work that property for him. So was able to get out there and hang a couple cameras early, and do the same thing. Put a couple double stands up actually for my dad to be able to get into, and then a couple hang-ons. So I put the cameras out, a couple weeks ago, and I've seen a little bit of movement, and I'm excited to see what produces there. And then at one of the properties that I hunt in Kentucky, but for the sake of time, that property has always produced big deer. There's a lot of ag mixed with timber in between the ag fields. So the deer, I would say that the deer movement is relatively predictable there, and it doesn't really change much. So for the sake of time, we just pretty much put our cameras in the same spots and, just re-prepped our stands and a couple of the hang-ons that we have there, and it seems to be getting the same results. So we're excited to get back out there in Kentucky, where we always see some big deer for sure.
Now, isn't South Carolina? Isn't it strange? Isn't it like the season starts really early and you can kill a bunch of bucks?
Yeah, it's a weird deal because it starts early here in the beginning of August. There's really not much time, and then it runs all the way, deep into January, and the rifle season, unlike Kentucky, is like forever. And I've really only ever archery there, but my dad primarily rifle hunts it, so I'm really trying to get him out. I keep telling him on this property, it's about 450 acres, and it butts up to a bunch of private, and he'll go out there and kill a deer early just because, he's always been more of a meat hunter. But some of these deer we've got on camera are really pretty impressive, especially the end of the season last year. It was weird. We started really seeing our big bucks like late in the season, and then right after the season ended in January. So I'm trying to figure out how to draw those deer out for him and get him to be patient and wait a little bit to maybe put a bigger one down,
Are you going to try to bear hunt that too?
No, so that's actually in Virginia. When I was talking to you about that, I bought I bought about 70 acres in Virginia this year, and really I haven't had time to really get in there and learn that property. I've only gone there 3 times, but there's an excessive amount of bear and turkeys on that land, and my neighbor there kills a bear like pretty regularly. So I was actually hoping me and you could get together. I'm not too educated on bear hunting, but it seems like something that I want to get out and just see what the deal with it is. So, maybe future podcasts down the road next year we'll be able to talk about some bear hunting tips.
Yeah. I've never done it before. I've never even looked into it, so I know nothing about bear hunting, so that'll be fun.
Yeah.
So you're running cameras already? You got them all out on private? You got them out on public?
No, I usually would have them on public, but because I ended up kind of falling into a couple private spots in different states and with my work schedule, I've only been able to get them out on private, but I'm hoping when I get back from this work trip that I will get some out on private. But I'll tell you, for everyone listening to this podcast, Ronnie is my tech, my tech wizard. I know you're running some cameras right now, and I've already seen some pictures of some great bucks that you've had. So, what are you seeing? Anything on your cameras that you're seeing that you're surprised by?
Well, I'm surprised by just the one I got last night. The picture I sent you, the one that's walking away.
Yeah.
That's up on some public, and that deer is really big for being this early in the season. I know that a lot of people say that they're, probably 50% done growing by now, if not more. But a lot of the bucks I've been seeing on my cameras are kind of look like they're still growing. They're smaller and still growing. But that guy looks like he's going to be a big deer.
Yeah, no, I agree. I thought the same thing when I saw him, and I think you're right too, because I would say that I think most deer, the couple good deer I've had on a couple different cameras, I would say are still growing. So maybe he is still growing, and based on the drought and stuff that we had, I wouldn't be surprised if the deer are still growing. So yeah, he's probably going to be a good one for sure.
Yeah. So what I did that I want to try this year is I have 2. So last year I was chasing 2 big bucks up in Kentucky, and I ended up not seeing either one of them and shooting a different deer. But this year I went in, and one of those deer I was chasing, I already put a camera in every location that I had him last year, because he's a big 13 point. I've actually had him on camera 2 years in a row. And last year he showed up within 1 day of the day he showed up the year prior. So I'm trying to see if this year, if that deer is still alive, if he shows up on the same time schedule. I'm going to try to be out there that day, but I'm interested to see like if there's something like if there's a doe that comes in the heat that just triggers him to come into that area exactly at the time, because I don't see him until the beginning of November.
Yeah, that's crazy, man. I think it's funny how predictable, whitetails really are. And, people on this podcast are probably going to get tired of hearing me talk about shed hunting, but I've really started to nerd out on it a lot. And because of what it's really taught me, I found the same sheds of the same deer, 3 years in a row in generally the same location. And it's really just surprised me to see how predictable. And that deer has showed up on a camera of a neighboring property, and I've never seen that deer while I'm hunting the property that I was shed hunting. But it showed up on the neighbor's property quite a bit, but I found his shed on the private property that I was on. So it's interesting to me that deer is shedding its horns. So in that time of year, to your point about that deer showing up on the camera and you're interested to see it, this particular buck that I'm talking about, has dropped his sheds in the general location, but seems to, rut in other places in a little bit of a different area. So kind of interesting.
Where are you finding your sheds?
So I would say
saved my life.
I started like focusing on bedding areas and things like that. But now, man, I've started to tell people that, like, if there's deer there, there's sheds there. And I used to like focus on the bedding areas and find sheds. And I would probably say I find more in bedding areas, of course. And I think that's only the case.
No, I'm used to hunting a lot of hill country. So when I think of bedding, I think of like leeward side ridges where the deer can smell everything from behind them and see down the hill and stuff. But you're kind of in a flatter area. So what are you using as bedding areas? Just thick stuff or?
Yeah, I guess you could say thick, and also definitely where the deer, can have concealment, but also sense pressure. And I think a lot of times when I'll look at like, map recon of the ag fields, especially in Kentucky, and see kind of like a choke point where like two fields might come together. So not necessarily a hedgerow, but, a good couple acres of woods that go filter into a large set of woods with like two ag fields on each side, if that makes sense. So think like a thick hedgerow, a big hedgerow is what I'm for. And I'm usually like, I bet you that's a bedding area. And really depending on the terrain, like you said, especially if there's any type of elevation or slope in there, I usually kind of find some bedding signs in those areas.
Okay.
Yeah. So
you said you do have cameras. Are you running all non-cell cams, or are you using A-cell cams?
Yeah, you know me. I gotta stop. I'm really waiting for some Ronnie hand-me-downs. Yeah. So I'm still running non-cell cameras, but I have purchased 2 cell cameras. Haven't had a chance to put them up, and honestly, I'm really waiting to put those on some public land because I won't be able to check those cameras enough. But to your point earlier about pressure, like I gotta get me some cell cams, man, because I don't know. I feel like last year I may have pressured my cameras too much by checking them. So I think it's
and then checking the cards.
Yeah, I try to let them go a couple weeks, but sometimes if I'm really trying to decide on where I'm going to set up, I want to get in there and see what's on that camera, and I know that's not ideal. But you're running primarily cell cams, right?
Yeah, I'm running almost all cell cams, and then I only have about 5 non-cell cams that I use to kind of just put in areas that I can drive up and check them almost. Or drive up on an ATV or something that I don't have to really go bust into the woods. Yeah, for me, I don't worry myself with like all the controversy and stuff. For an hour and a half, so it's like, what am I going to do with this information? And I'm only a bow hunter. It's not like I'm going to get a picture of a deer, and I only have them to save battery. A tip that like people want the pictures like instantly and stuff, but if you don't want to go in there and be changing all your cell cam batteries because they'll eat through batteries, I have them send me the pictures every night at 9 p.m. I send them once a day. You know, and then so if I put lithium batteries in there, they last the entire year. They last the entire season. And I don't have to go in there and change any of those batteries. So
Well,
I definitely don't feel good.
yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because that was kind of honestly one of the things that for the longest time I didn't go with cell cams is because I know guys would have them like setting all the time, but I actually like the setting you were just talking about that you just have them kind of all set at the same time every night. I like that.
Yeah, so I run a lot of them. I have probably 30 or 40 spread out between 2 states and, you know, 50,000 acres of public and private, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's nice because if I just set it at 9 p.m. every night, I can just be watching TV and then go in there at 9:15 and then just check all my pictures.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, putting these things back, you know, a mile or so in the woods in some places, and that doesn't sound like that far, like it's only a mile, but when you got to drive an hour and a half to get there, and then you got to walk, you know, put some new batteries in a thing, it's like, that's a whole day.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. Well, I think that's a good
What kind of
segue
cell
to.
cam did you get?
So I was literally just going to ask you that. So mine are just a basic. I don't even remember the brand, Celltech or something like that I found online. But I was gonna segue in to ask you. You know, I always love seeing and you update me on this new stuff you got. You know, what's a good plug? What's the company you go with? And then after we talk about this, before we close, I gotta jump in to talk about your new bow setup. But so yes, cameras. What brand are you running?
So I run a mix of mostly the Tacticam Reveals and then the new Exodus ones. The Exodus came out with a cheaper one because Exodus are usually pretty pricey, but they do like a 5-year no BS warranty on theirs. So if anything goes wrong with it, they'll replace it for up to 5 years, and then I think if it gets stolen or something, they'll take 50% off the next one or something like that. And that just seems like a good company because I like their podcast and I like the kind of content they put out and stuff. And then the Tacticam Reveals, I just had just really good service with, and I mean like cell service. So if you buy the Gen 2s, they come with a card for either AT&T or Verizon, and that's good for me because since I have AT&T, if I'm just walking around the woods and I want to put a camera there, all I have to do is look at my phone, and if I have 2 bars of service on my phone, then I know that my camera is going to have service with it. You know.
Yeah.
And so far, I've had really good luck with them. The only thing that sucks is like, so there's the initial investment of the cameras, and then, each camera is basically, if you do like the cheapest plan or something, is like $5 a month. So that adds up after a while.
Yeah. I mean, you know me, I'm probably, like I was joking about hand-me-downs. I'm kind of an old school hunter in the sense of I kind of get stuck to my ways I think that's one of the ways that we're different that should be cool on this podcast is like I'll get stuck in my ways and have trouble with changing. You're always pretty innovative, I feel like, and, trying out new things. So I've learned a lot from you as far as like the tech world with hunting. But yeah, I've always been a little nervous about like literally just, not nervous, but just, to take the step into paying for all that and then getting all that set up. But after looking at some of the pictures you sent me, especially last night and stuff, I think it's definitely a well worth it thing. And, I'm definitely going to get some up. The couple that I did buy, my wife, to be honest with you, bought them for my birthday because to your point about riding around and checking cameras, that became such a project for me. That she would be like, you're going to be gone, you're going to hunt all week, and you're going to have to go check cams. So she bought me a couple of these cheap cell phone cams. So, I think I'll get those up this year. And then maybe by next year, you know what I mean? I might try to transition most of mine to that. So I'm excited about that for sure. But anyway,
it's just such a time saver, you know.
yeah, no, for sure, man. But I gotta know, and I gotta want people to hear. I know you. So you got a new bow again this year, right?
Yeah. I
Yeah.
wasn't going to.
Yeah. So what are you hunting with this year primarily?
So I was out in Colorado and I had a V3. So okay, a little backstory. So 2 seasons ago, I was hunting and I did something dumb. I was trying to move my saddle point or something like that, just kind of get in a better spot. And I knocked my bow out of the tree and it fell, kind of damaged and stuff. So I took it to the shop. And the shop's swamped in November. So they were like, yeah, I can get you this back in like a week and a half. A week and a half, the rut can be over in some spots
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
So I said from that point, like, hey, I'm going to have a bow and I'm going to have a backup bow. So I went out and bought a new bow that year and then just kept my old bow. So I think I had a Matthews Vertex and a Matthews V3 or something. So
Yeah.
then I upgraded. I had the Matthews V and the V3X. So this year I sold my V3, and then I went to the new Phase 4, which I wasn't going to buy, but I was in Colorado at Bill Pellegrew's or something archery shop, which is the nicest archery shop I've ever been to. And I shot it, and after I shot it, I was like, well, this sucks because now I'm buying this bow.
Yeah. I feel like that's usually how it goes.
Yeah, I didn't think it was going to be as awesome as it is. It's just dead in the hand. It's just quiet. It just shoots perfect. And for me, a lot of it is like string angle and like just
Yeah.
kind of how it feels at hold at full draw. Like the V3X and the Phase 4 feel almost the same to me, and that's what I love. And that way I can have like kind of a backup setup and stuff. The V3 just kind of felt like a different bow for some reason to me. So it was kind of like I had two different bows when really I wanted almost the same bow.
hmm Do you think there's any situation that you see yourself? Is that backup bow going to be set up in any type of a way that you see yourself like transitioning to that backup bow based on a hunt, or is that more of a strictly backup should that other bow break? You know what I mean?
Well, honestly, I think the way so I had a backup bow last year, and the way I used it is when I went up my Colorado antelope hunt, I took my backup bow just in case anything happened to it in transit or whatever. I still have my primary bow for when I got home for deer season.
Yeah.
So I used it for that. And then like if it's raining out or something, or I've got to like strap it to a bike or something, or a potential way that it could get damaged from something that's out of the norm of, walking instead of shooting and hunting, then I'll take my backup bow. And I mean, it shoots perfectly fine. So, I mean, it's a backup bow, but it's a primary bow. There's nothing different about it.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. That's pretty. Again, I think I'm so old school. I've always stuck with one, but that would be a nice thing to have for sure. I've actually been pretty excited because I've been able to get a decent amount of arrows. About the last couple of weeks, I've finally gotten out there and been able to sling a decent amount of arrows. Have you got out and shot much yet?
Yeah. That's the thing about it's like hanging out with. I can. But I'm kind of hesitant about it because last year and the year before I kind of really got into shooting 3D, and I bought a target that I was using because I thought I was going to get into target archery and stuff too, and then all the leagues shut down and they didn't have any target archery around here anymore. So I started using it for. Now I'm like, well, I'm a hunter, so why am I using this target bow to shoot 3D animals? Like, I'm not going to be a professional, so why not just be out there shooting with my hunting bow? So now I just shoot with my hunting bow, but I have, since I moved into my new house 2 years ago now, I have a range up to 60 yards at my house. So after work, I'll go back and play a couple arrows, every few days. So I don't really go long spurts without shooting.
Yeah, same
Are you
here.
still, are you still shooting the same bow I sold you?
Yeah, so yeah, man, that Elite 35, I love it. And I think I told you a couple months ago, I guess no, not even a couple months. It was right at the end of the season last year. I was like, you know what, I might get something new. And if I get it, I want it to be obviously end of the season when things are a little cheaper, and then give me time to tweak it before the season. And I think it was like I started thinking that like right at the end of the season, and then my last one of the last hunts of the year, I wanted to fill the freezer just a little bit more, and a doe walked out, and she was like, it was like a quartering away, like, and she was at like 50 yards, and I shot that bow and put it right down, and I looked at myself and I was just like, you know what? I think this bow just earned itself at least another seat. So
that bow shoots so well. It holds so well. That bow is so accurate.
Yeah, well, it's funny you say that it holds so well, because that's one of the nicest things I like. I feel like I always have, like, I will draw pretty early on a deer,
Oh, do
and
you?
yeah, I don't know why. I don't know if it's I don't know. I just kind of always have. I think maybe some missed opportunities when I was younger. And when I was younger, hunting on my dad's farm, like, I had some old, I don't know, it was like a Bear or a PSE bow that, like, and, to go back to your point earlier, I was actually going to comment on that about, like, when you're talking about target shooting and stuff, is like my dad, kind of growing up hunting with him, like, we would go out, swing a couple arrows, and just as long as they were in the thing, he would always say, it'll kill deer. Meaning, like, he's not a competition shooter, but just as long as he can shoot it, in the vitals, he's good. So I say all that because I used to have an old bow when I was like, 15 years old, and I think a couple missed opportunities and stuff like that. I was just kind of like, maybe excitement too, I don't know, draw early. But anyway, yeah, that bow holds so well. If I do that and I end up, at full draw for a while, I feel like that bow is just, I don't know, it holds well, it shoots well, and I don't know. I know there's a lot of new technologies. That's why I would love to see that new bow you got. But I've had trouble finding anything that I think other bows have that Elite, like, doesn't have. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like it shoots fine, everything works fine, it's functional. So I'm like, every year I'm like, well, maybe I'll wait to see until something crazy comes up. Now I've looked into those new Phase 4s and stuff, and I think there are a couple things that you could probably, maybe on another podcast, really fill me in on and convince me otherwise. But I think for now I'm going to keep shooting that Elite, man.
Yeah, don't fix it if it's not broke, right?
No, it's a fact, yep.
Yeah, so where did you put your, okay, so here's a question for you. For your trail cameras strategy and stuff, do you target early season movement, or do you just go ahead and kind of write off the early season and put where you think the deer are going to shift to once the food sources change and they go hardhorned?
Yeah, so it's actually funny you bring that up, because I am pretty set on anymore, and it might be because I don't run a lot of cell cams, to go back to what we're talking about, but I've pretty much put them to where I think the deer are going to be moving. And that is probably sometimes a bad idea when it comes to pressuring those areas. But I find that when I used to put, and I always run a couple that are easy to get to in more of a transition area, just out of curiosity, But I've really, you brought up target bucks earlier. I think in the last couple of years, I've really tried to start, targeting deer and seeing the same deer, especially as I've been hunting a little bit more private. So short answer is I put them where I think the deer are going to end up in the height of the season. for the most part, I would say. What about you?
I do almost the same. I put them now for where I want them in November, really, just so that the deer see them and get used to them if they're around.
Yeah.
So, so like some of the guys don't have enough. Yeah, I put a camera in the 90-day deer, so I'm gonna go get it and I'm gonna move it to another spot. Once I put a camera in a spot, unless I run out of cameras and need a camera to put in a different spot, I let it sit the whole season because you don't know when that camera is going to become hot. You know what I mean? Because I've had cameras that have sat swear that there's no deer in the area, and then October 20th comes around, and then that hot spot, and that camera's getting pictures of deer every day.
Oh yeah, I totally agree. I've read a couple things where exactly what you're talking about, where guys have this like crazy camera strategy where they're moving them, at different times. And to me, it's like I've really learned that the deer are there. It just depends on when they're going to. I think anybody who's running the cameras like we do has at least a general knowledge of where to put those cameras. So I've never really had a camera that doesn't at least produce something, So
Right. Yeah. Do you do any summer glassing? Because that's something that primarily hunting big woods, I haven't had an opportunity to really do, but I might go do it on the public that we both hunt this summer at some point.
Yeah, no, I actually, I guess I gotta go, but here I am going back to shed hunting a little bit. Short answer is I'm gonna start doing that more, and I have, because when I would shed hunt and, right after the season, like kind of when sheds are on the ground, I started glassing a lot. Like I would be looking for sheds, and if it got bored, I wasn't finding anything, I would just start glassing. And I started to realize, especially the areas like you're talking about, how many more deer I would see. And actually one really cool story I have to tell about this shed hunting season. I don't think I've even told you this yet. I was on some public land, and I'm looking down. I found a couple good sheds, and I looked up across the creek, and I see 3 to 4 deer, and definitely 2 of them, and I think even the third, were bucks that were still holding antlers. And this was pretty late. Like I figured that all the sheds would be on the ground, which, so what you were talking about earlier about deer still growing, I definitely think deer this year held their antlers long. And again, I think that had something probably maybe to do with the drought we had last year. But regardless, I started glassing this group of deer, and I'm watching them. And I think as I started to get a little closer to them, I started to pressure them a little bit. They definitely knew I was there. They're looking back at me. And this one deer in particular was a huge 6. Like it was a 6-point deer, but just massive, a lot of mass. It was a really weird rack because it was just, a tine with a split fork, but it was just he was very big. And, he was holding both on both sides. And then he kind of ran through the woods. I lost him, so I'm kind of glassing him through the woods, and then I see him stop. And when he stops, he's only got one. He's only got one antler on one side.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I said, I swear that deer had 2, 30 seconds ago. So I had to go to work. So I did a lot of shed hunting before work. I would get up early, and then I'd have to run to work. So I went back to my truck, went to work, and then that afternoon, it was all day at work. I couldn't do anything but think about that darn shed. So I got back in my truck after work, drove all the way back out there, walked directly beeline to where the deer were, and sure enough, there was that fresh shed, like right in the area where I had seen him. So he dropped that antler as I was glassing him, which I thought was pretty cool.
Oh man, that's awesome. That's like one in a million there.
Yeah, it was really neat.
So will you go out to any bean fields this summer and sit, and kind of, hide in the tree line and do any glassing, you think, and see what kind of velvet bucks you see?
Yeah, I think I probably will. I think we were talking about this earlier. I really want a velvet buck is something I just have not, it's something I haven't checked off the list yet. So I really want to, I really would like to get one, as I'm sure everybody listening to this would. So I do want to get out and glass a lot more, really just to kind of, for lack of better term, scout early to be able to know, where those bucks are moving, especially on some of that private land or the public land that we hunt. But have you had any luck with velvet hunts at all?
No, almost none. It's so hot. Well, I've missed the Tennessee one the last 2 years just for being out of town for work. And I think I'm out of town for work again this year. Kentucky comes in so early that you can get a velvet hunt in. But the problem is where I hunt in Kentucky, it's a big wood setting. So I think a lot of people are killing velvet bucks, on ag or coming to ag. And I just don't have any spots that set up like that. Mine are more like rut or oak flats is kind of the food source and stuff. So I kind of have to wait for those spots until they transition off of the fields and more into the woods and oaks and acorns and stuff like that.
Yeah. I think it's cool that you hunt big woods in Kentucky like that. And that one deer that you killed, what was that, 2 or 3 years ago on that public land up in Kentucky? I mean, that was a hoss. One day we got to do a whole podcast just on that story. I think people would probably love to hear about that deer you killed. But what's interesting to me about it, that a lot of your Kentucky hunting is big woods, where I think, at least where we are in Western Kentucky, a lot of that pressure is on ag fields like you're talking about, because there obviously is so many ag fields and a lot of people are in box blinds sitting on fields. So, I think there's a lot of bucks like the one that you killed that are deep in those Kentucky woods that don't get as much pressure as some of the other spots. So I kind of would like to get out there with you and have you show me the ropes of specifically that area we're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be happy to go up there and scout with you sometime. Summer scouting's so tough, man, because it's so hot and nasty and stuff. But I feel like you gotta do it just to get out there, especially if you're hunting somewhere new, just to learn the lay of the land. Just going in somewhere like to a whole new area blind is so intimidating. Like once the season starts, it just kind of feels like you're wasting time when you don't know if there's any deer there or not.
Yeah.
So I think so. One of the things I wanted to talk about was, to me, that's the biggest part of running trail cameras is an inventory, not so much of like setting up and knowing a deer's habit, is taking inventory, seeing what's in the area, but then giving you that confidence that you're not wasting your time and kind of giving you a little motivation for the season. Because before I started running a lot of cameras, I would go up to the big woods piece that we're talking about, and it's a low deer density area. So I'd go sits, like week-long sits without seeing a single deer, or I might see one doe, and I'll be like, I am the worst hunter in the world. I have no idea what I'm doing. There's no deer here. This spot sucks, and then I threw up a camera, 2 hours after dark, like a 150 is walking through or something, so it's just wasn't the right time, but it's the right area, so it just kind of gives you that confidence of like, okay, I kind of know what I'm doing a little bit.
Yeah, no, I think, man, it's funny. So I think we've all felt, and there's been a season I've hunted that I haven't felt like I'm the worst hunter in the world at least a couple days, And I think it's just such a patient game. So yeah, I think you're right. Like running as many cameras as you are, and self cameras definitely is going to increase that confidence level, because I tend to get like hunting ADD too. You sit out there on 2 hunts where you feel like you're the worst hunter in the world, and you think about all you can think about is all the other deer that are probably passing, other areas that you could be hunting. So.
I will, as soon as I set up in a spot for that day, I'll think about the spot I should be hunting, or I'll think about the spot I'm going to hunt tomorrow. You know what I mean? Like, it's hard for me to live in the moment. I'm like, okay, well, where am I going to hunt tomorrow now? And it's like 5 a.m. at the spot I'm at.
Yeah. Yeah, that's, one day I want to do a podcast. I want to do a whole podcast on like all day sits and what, we think of them and things like that, because I like doing them personally, but to what you're talking about, on a bad all day sit, I find myself like mad at myself by the end of the day for being in that area.
You just wasted your entire day.
Yeah. So like, it's funny because like, and then you also feel like sometimes I'm like, if I don't sit here all day and I'll be checking the weather and different things. I'm like, oh, it's gonna be good here in a couple hours, So I don't know.
Well, that's the thing is like you get so demotivated, and let down when I don't know about you, but the night before, like if the weather's lining up and everything's looking good, and maybe I've had a good deer on camera or something, I'll like get so excited like I can't sleep, and then to get out there, hours before the sun comes up, and then sit there all day long until dark, and just like not see any deer or like see a doe or something, and you're just like, man, what a letdown. And then to know like, well, I need to come do this again tomorrow,
Yeah, well, it's funny, kind of what we're talking about. That's one thing I always think that I would have trouble with cell cams is if I saw, if my phone started dinging off in a certain spot with some monster, at 9 p.m., it's going to be hard for me not to just like chase that deer, Like,
oh yeah, absolutely.
It's like, and it's not like he's going to be there necessarily 7 hours later, but to me it would be like, oh God, he's there. I got to be there. So.
Yeah. Oh yeah, he's going to walk right back by. Well,
Yeah.
you want to go ahead and close our first episode here, and we'll call this one in the books.
Yeah, man, dude. Hey, first of all, like I said, I really appreciate you waiting on me, and I appreciate for anyone who's listening. I'm really excited about this podcast. Man, I could have talked for another hour, so hopefully we'll get a chance to do it again soon. And for everyone listening, thanks a lot for listening to the Rough Funnel podcast. We'll see you next time.
All right, thanks, guys. We'll see you next time.